Welcome to the FNO InsureTech Podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world, here we are with another remarkable, amazing, surprising, and informative and thought-provoking episode of FNO InsureTech, your only podcast that you should ever listen to.
That's right.
Or so, give or take.
There's a lot
every
of
other
podcasts out
podcast
there.
you listen to.
A lot of podcasts out there.
A lot of there's no beginning or end to the podcast world, right?
No,
I think it's infinite.
I was on Audible the other day and I was looking for a new audio book for when I work out, and they have podcasts that are just on Audible.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're really good. There's
they?
a private equity one on there that I was really interested in. Yeah.
Well,
everybody has podcasts.
Here's my biggest problem with podcasts. Where do you find the time to enjoy them all? I mean, because there's few podcasts that are like done and said in 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
No, there's very few. I'll listen to one every day. I listen to one podcast about stoicism, and I'll listen to that one, and it's 4 to 6 minutes long. It's a great way to start my day. But whenever I get an hour and a half one, it's a lot for me.
It's a lot. And one of my favorite podcasts, as you know, is Peter Attia's podcast, and
they can last 24 hours.
Yeah,
they're great, but who has the time?
It's packed with information and knowledge and know-how.
Yeah,
but how do you find time to comprehensively?
I don't know.
Listen to that. I don't know.
Between that, your social media and your TV, and your job, and I don't know how people do things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all doing it while they're at work.
You know what? It would be very interesting to know.
Yeah. When are they?
When
listening?
do people listen to podcasts? And I'll bet you plenty are during the workday.
Pre-COVID, we know that they were, before and after work, people would listen on the train or on the bus or on the whatever as they're going in and out. But I don't know. I don't know when they're listening.
So I got to ask you, our audience knows this is not, we don't have video, but you got a new haircut? You wearing a new hairstyle here?
I actually get it. I started going to get, Rob Beller told me that I had to quit going to the great clips.
To supercuts.
To supercuts. Yeah. And I'm a grown man, and I need to go to a grown man haircut place. So I now have a wonderful barber.
Not a barber, a hairstylist.
Well, he's a barber. He's a barber.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes, he says he's a barber.
All right.
And every 4 weeks, I have a regularly scheduled haircut now because I'm a professional person. Yeah, and that's what professional people do.
That's right.
And you know what? I've actually been very happy with it because I used to go like 8 weeks where I look like, Tarzan.
Yeah, no.
Only from the head up, but
no, not good.
No, I'm doing, and I go again tomorrow, and it's a quick hit, and I'm excited about it. But
Well,
thank you for noticing.
You look like a grown-up professional man.
Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, I've known Lee Boyd since maybe 2007 or 8, something like that.
That's about right.
And so that's a long time.
You've watched me grow up.
I've watched you go from being a boy to being a man.
Professional man.
I liked the boy. I like the man.
Well, thank you.
There, I said it.
Thank you, Rob.
I said.
I think that
that wasn't
the
weird.
barber does a good job. Well, I feel closer to you. I feel closer to you. Everyone who listens to this is going, that's weird.
Right.
Everyone
who
what
listens to this is saying,
listening?
Are they going to kind of stop? They're talking about wasting time on podcasts, and here we go.
You can just ramble on, just keep on rambling.
We have a great podcast today, by the way. Incidentally.
What about you?
There's two reasons why it's great. One is the guest. Primarily is the guest. What do you mean, what about me?
Well, I just wondered, did you stop going to the barber, or you still go to yours?
No, I just, I'm just a little behind today. Okay.
I just wondered. Go ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
so everybody knows we record these at 5 a.m. Pacific time, which it's 5 a.m. right now. So excuse me if I don't have my
just rolled
face
out of
on
bed.
yet.
Oh.
Lee is an
bushy-tailed.
ageist. I'm an old guy. He's an ageist. And so he's making fun of me and my age. That's fine, Lee.
Okay.
Huh?
We've rambled. Let's talk about our wonderful guest.
So two reasons. One is we have a really surprisingly wonderful guest today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Alex Duta from Albi.
Yeah.
And he is here to talk all about that platform and not only what his company's doing, but really about the restoration industry, which is really terrific.
Yeah.
That's one reason why this is great. The other reason is that my audio uptake quit about 1/4 of the way into the podcast, so you don't have to listen to me.
It did. You just quit. And you know what? We just kept going. I was so enthralled with the conversation. It might have been a few minutes before I even noticed because I was so into this conversation. So
I could tell that you were ready to run with it.
They're not all that way. Sometimes I'm ready to end them sooner than others. This one I really enjoyed going with.
Yeah, he was thoughtful and super intelligent and really showed a lot of expertise and insight.
Yeah. And we have to say a Y Combinator grad, right? Went to Y Combinator.
Right. Shout out to Alex Beller.
If you know anything about that, years ago, we had a couple of them on. Alex Beller was on from it. We have a lot of respect for what's going on over there, and they are a very difficult group to get involved with, and Albi found its way in there.
Right. Exclusive. It's an exclusive group.
Yeah.
And but all that being said, without further ado, here is our interview with Alex Duta from Albi. Hey, everybody. We are here on this beautiful summer day with our special guest. Alex Duta is coming to us from Illinois today. Isn't that correct, Alex?
Yes, sir. Nice to be here, Rob and Lee. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Alex.
It's great to have you. And Alex is the founder or co-founder?
I would say co-founder, founder. I mean, technically I'm the founder, but I have a co-founder, so we're co-founders. So
okay, cool.
Okay.
All right. Of Albi. Albi is a product that we're going to be hearing all about today. And we thank you for being with us. This has been a long time working up to this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm super excited to have an interesting and deep conversation today.
Sounds great.
Well, you know, if Lee and I are involved, we don't know that either of those things will happen.
No, we're sorry. We're sorry in
Hold your
advance.
breath. But we will talk for a little while. So let's just jump in and do that. So just so that everybody knows, we met Alex through our own Alex, my son Alex, who is an alumni. His company is an alumni of the famed accelerator Y Combinator, and you guys went through Y Combinator, correct?
Correct.
When was that?
So we were summer of 22, or the cohort of the summer of 22 in Y Combinator. So
How
about
exciting.
2 years ago.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you and share some of your thoughts or experience about going through that program, which is not InsureTech focused, for those of you out there who aren't familiar with Y Combinator.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, Y Combinator isn't necessarily InsureTech focused, but there have been quite a few InsureTech companies that have gone through the program. The way a lot of people on the street talk about Y Combinator is like the Harvard of business incubators. And essentially what Y Combinator does is they look for companies that are making massive impact in interesting industries. And they basically have this whole regimented vetting process to look for the ones that have the highest potential. And they back companies like Coinbase, DoorDash, Airbnb, and such. They've backed Roofer in the roofing space, for example, as well. And they basically talk to 5,000 to 6,000 companies every year. They invest in like a couple hundred companies. And their whole value prop is we invest a small amount for a large percentage of the company. We then teach you how the entire venture world works to give you the tools that you need to be able to build and make an impact in your space. And the experience is very humbling because InsureTech in general doesn't get much love. Most VCs in Silicon Valley individuals do not know about the property insurance industry and property claims and the amount of volume that happens within that space. And it's not like crypto and other industries. So it was rather hard to get in, but it was awesome because it opened up a lot of doors. It taught us how to build a venture-backed startup. It taught us how to take care of our customers. It taught us how to fundraise. And most importantly, like the interesting thing I got out of it is it taught us how to run in the marathon. Coming from building a company before bootstrapped, you're sacrificing a lot of family, a lot of health, a lot of other aspects of life to be able to build your company. And the first talk we got at Y Combinator was founders, take care of your health, take care of yourselves, take care of your families. You're running a marathon here, not a sprint. So don't burn out in year number 1, 2, run the long run, which was actually pretty impactful. So
yeah, that's a really neat thing. I didn't know that they started out that way. I think that's a really cool. It was really cool.
And it was odd because I'm sitting here and like, you just took 7% of my company. You want me to take this company IPO and you're telling me to go, take care of my health. I appreciate that, but why?
Yeah. I would
imagine
it's
a marathon.
It's a marathon.
It is. Yeah. You can't sprint hard at the beginning. You have to keep a steady pace for the marathon.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what year it was that my son's company went through, a company named Postscript. They're in the e-commerce space. And, but it was in the teens, so maybe 18 or 19. And they're still in the marathon.
Yep.
Right? It's I think 5 or 6 years later, the marathon is still on. I hope they can see the finish line, but it's not right there. And so it's a long road.
Yeah. That's exciting. What a great foundation. What a great base you got.
Thank you.
Well, cool. So you you've created this company Albi. Let's start today by you sharing with us and telling us what the heck it is and what do you do? Absolutely.
So Albi is an end-to-end workflow management tool for damage restoration contractors currently. We have a strong thesis that if you look at the damage restoration space, contractors in general are lacking the tools of efficiency that other contractors have. So if you look at other industries, there's the service titans of the world, the job nimbuses, house call pros, and they all build technology for contractors from a product focused standpoint. Whereas if you look at the damage restoration space, there's, 2 incumbents that are older school tech, think about it, and they haven't really focused on products. They've focused on going to market from a very strategic approach, which I'm not saying is necessarily wrong. I just disagree partially with it. And what happens is damage restoration contractors then don't get these tools to increase efficiency. So I'm talking about things like, call tracking, payments handling, data flowing from the field to the office and clarity and such. And then it makes them inefficient. And then ultimately it creates all this friction within the InsureTech ecosystem. And then we have this entire battle between, insurance carriers trying to find ways to, be able to take care of their customers. And then the contractors trying to find ways to take care of the customers and put bread on the table. And eventually our vision is our first goal is to delight contractors, give them the tools that they need to optimize their workflows so that way they could be super efficient. And then we want to explore ways to then help the entire property insurance ecosystem with all the materially interested parties in the claim process also do the same. And we have a strong belief that the claim is equal to the work of the contractor. So you start with the claim, and then once you solve that problem, you can solve other problems.
Give us a little more there. What do you mean? I'm not exactly
Yeah, help me understand
sure
that
what
one.
You mean there.
So in the InsureTech world, we look at the claim as the loss payout to the policyholder, right? Something happens to a property, and as an insurance carrier, we write a check to take care of the policyholder. 90 or 80 some percent of the times when managed repair programs like Alacrity aren't involved, it's literally, that's the transaction. But in reality, those funds most of the time are used to fund this other economy, which is the economy of damage restoration contractors. And I think currently the entire ecosystem is focused on making assumptions of what that economy looks like. And nobody really owns the claim, the efficiency, the standardization and such. And we have, organizations like the IICRC and the RIA trying to standardize those workflows. But I think that there isn't like a core source of truth on how these claims are processed. There's contractors that are super efficient. There's contractors that are very inefficient. There's contractors that have 30% EBITDA margins, and there's contractors that have 5% EBITDA margins. So it's our theory that helping standardize and helping the contractors understand how they could be more efficient helps them put bread on the table for their families. And it also reduces the amount of fluff, different factors that they have to do. Because at the end of the day, it's also our theory that when the contractor adds fluff or does certain things, it's because they can't see the efficiency side of things and they need to compensate for that. And technology can help with those things. If the contractor doesn't need to, well, I'll rewind. In our industry, it takes 10 administrative people on the contractor side to run probably 80 technicians. In plumbing, it takes one administrative person to run the same technician, right? And that's also due to lack of technology and such. So in retrospect, the insurance carriers are paying for 9 extra administrative people on the contractor side, and the contractors aren't necessarily typically always good at the administrative side. So if we can help reduce that need and give that contractor these easy to use tools to gather the data without requiring all these inputs, and then also kind of streamline and standardize the process, it's a win-win-win for all parties. Contractors are more efficient, costs stabilize on that end, insurance carriers get what they need to make sure that they're de-risking, and then ultimately the policyholder gets put back together faster in a more cost-effective way, and hopefully premiums don't go up as crazily because, everything level sets a little bit.
Yeah. So Alex, where did this idea come from? Where did you get this idea from?
Well, I got the idea building a restoration company with my father. So, my father and I started a restoration company. He was a subcontractor for other restoration companies. Actually went through like the early 2000s as a subcontractor for a fire chasing restoration company. So this company would basically chase fires. They were a public adjusting fire chasing firm. They would chase these fires, lock them up. They would negotiate with the insurance company. And then for 50% of the claims proceed, they would subcontract to my father. And then my father had all these crews that would do the work. And then he had margin built with them. So to kind of show you what it looked like back then. Because I also, from the insurance carrier standpoint, we don't realize the unit economics of the other side. And, it was a very profitable environment for him until he had a person fall off a roof and workers' comp claim, multi-million-dollar workers' comp claim. The person wasn't even hired by him, and he lost his workers' comp insurance. So he now could not do business with the restoration contractor at all because they required workers' comp insurance. So suddenly his $2 million subcontracting business went to zero, and he did everything an immigrant father would do, from trucking to property management to all other types of businesses. And as I was finishing up high school, senior year of high school, we were sitting on a beach and he was thinking of, hey, let's start a restaurant together. And I'm like, why don't we start a restoration company? You have all this experience in doing the work. And he's like, well, I don't know how to sell. And at the time in high school, I was selling knickknacks, like printing and promotional material for car dealerships. Okay. And I'm like, well, I can sell things. I just don't know how to do the work. So we partnered up, started Romextera back up, and grew it to an 8-figure restoration company. The company's still around here in Chicagoland market today. Awesome. 90 or so employees doing water damage, mitigation, reconstruction. We have a roofing division and a contents division. And while growing that company, we went through a lot of challenges, from, trying to acquire top talent to trying to get paid. Getting paid as a restoration contractor is not a very easy process. to maintaining margins, right? You can do 20% net profit, accrual basis, but by the time the delay of the money coming in, that's very low. And we realized we were very inefficient. Before was pen and paper and folders, and then we ended up using some other solutions that existed in the marketplace. And the whole idea started with us going to Service Titan. We really loved the way Service Titan had built technology for plumbers and how a phone call comes into the system and it's recorded and then everything's tracked from A to Z. And we asked them, hey, can we buy a subscription? And they said, no, we won't sell to restoration contractors. Our product doesn't fit that industry. I'm like, interesting. So we set out to build that. We were very inspired by it. But what if we could build something that could track the file from the minute the phone call rings to the minute the file of the COC is signed and the file is closed? And we built it for our company. We launched it within our company. We saw our return on receivables go from 90 days to 35 days. We saw our revenue per production employee skyrocket. And we saw all these efficiencies go on within our company that were awesome. And we shared it with a few other contractors and then realized that, hey, we should probably go to market with this to help the entire industry benefit from it.
That's really cool. And so you set out to make this, as you said here, right, end-to-end workflow tool for the restoration industry. So what makes it contractor focused? Does it have pricing included in it, or is it just that it speaks the language of contractors and restoration?
Absolutely. That's an awesome question. So the number one challenge as a restoration contractor is you're showing up and you're doing all this work on the front end, and there's an insurance policy and an insurance payment that's an unknown amount that is getting paid out on the back end, specifically in emergency service work. So fire happens, you go board up the home. You don't know how much the dollar amount's going to be, but you got to do the work, show up there after the fire department, and then dry out the property and so on and so forth. And what do insurance carriers want when they're adjusting losses? They want documentation, right? They want to have, everything that happened, why it happened. And insurance carriers have no, intention to not pay the claim out as long as there's documentation. Where the friction happens is the contractor is unable to collect the critical documentation from the field to the office to package it up and then get it to the insurance company due to the lack of technological solutions. And we're also dealing with tradesmen that perhaps aren't as tech savvy as insurance adjusters are, right? Put exact analysis in front of an insurance adjuster and they'll zip through it. And even they stumble sometimes, right? But try to put that type of software in front of a technician that's, maybe doesn't even speak English very well, right?
Yeah, sure.
So the concept of Albi was, how can we gather this critical information as intuitively as possible without it requiring an overload of user inputs? So when I came up, the first experiment was, let's get a phone call to ring into the system so then we know that we had a job without having somebody enter data into the system, right? Because the old way was you answered a call on your cell phone or your office phone, you wrote down a note on a sticky note and then forgot to put it in the job management system. So we built it from the minute the phone rings, we capture that, to let's make it super easy for timesheets to be collected and then put into the job file. Let's make all the emails that are conversed on a regular email pull into the job file. Let's make psychrometrics and equipment tracking to be super easy. So if an equipment gets placed on a job site, we know that it happened, not because somebody told us it happened, but because there's an IoT network that's telling us that those things are happening. Let's make photos super easy to use, because even in modern day competitor tech, you have to take photos on your phone and then upload them, or you have this experience where you have to take a photo, wait for it to load, hit next, take another photo. We want to make it super easy to use, super easy to scan or take photos and plop them in. And basically, what we're creating is this system that feeds this information through the natural behaviors of the user, so that it's super easy to then package up all that information and to tell the story of what happened to that loss. And we do that through native stuff we built. We also integrate with various providers, like the phone system is, all backed by Twilio. The equipment tracking system is backed by Kahi and so on and so forth. And ultimately, it's a lot easier to spin up a report and go to an insurance carrier and say, here's everything I'm billing you for. Here's the justifiable information by it. If you have a question why there were, 5 air movers on there for 5 days, here's the graph that shows that it took 5 days to dry and the air movers were running throughout the entire time. If you want a justification as to what time I showed up and why I'm charging you for after hours, here's the time clock that is geo-stamped that shows that Bob Jones was there at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it just boosts all this transparency. And now it eliminates that claims friction.
So you're focusing on making sure that you deliver the documents and the documentation of the inspection. We're not even talking about the pricing yet, but I assume whenever and this is me as an insurance guy, you get asked a lot about, can you prove what you did? And you're fixing the problem saying, I can absolutely prove what I did. I use all these integrations, and I'm looking at these integrations on your website now, right? Trilio, QuickBooks, all Gmail, all these things. You're saying you're fixing the problem of distrust. You're saying you don't even have to trust me. I have true documentation in a beautiful looking file. That's what you're doing. That's very interesting because as an adjuster, I mean, I've been in the insurance field for 20 plus years. You see an air mover, right? Early in my days, I didn't know what an air mover was. I'm like, why is an air mover there 5 days? How do I know it's there, right? How do I prove this? And you're saying I'm solving that. I am proving it. That's really fascinating, Alex. I think that's a really neat and useful tool. And I have to ask, how's it going? I mean, are insurance companies accepting this information?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right now we're working with contractors with the 85% of the market that is not necessarily doing TPA work, and they're getting to these losses anyway. And yeah, the insurance companies are looking at our reports, and obviously, for a non-independent restoration contractor to have the type of data that a TPA restoration contractor is required to have, there's a huge plus there. And then we've been working with a lot of vendor program contractors that, despite the fact that there may be some more extra manual data exchange, they prefer to use Albi over the other systems because of the time that they save in gathering the information. We finalized our integration with Exact Analysis, and we'll be, allowing that data to streamline straight into the insurance carrier systems as well. That's all done. It's just pending some final legal authorizations, and it's our vision to dive in deeper and deeper into the ecosystem. Another area on top of the documentation, because we're not just a field service management tool, we built things like analytics, for example, and automations. And those two things help contractors, one, be more aware of the inefficiencies they have within their business. So we've brought think of BI from a business analyst standpoint, made super simple for contractors to see where the leaky bucket is. And then automations on top of that. The number one pet peeve most adjusters have with restoration contractors is the fact that they take weeks to submit things, and then they complain why they didn't get paid. So we built in automated workflows that can send automated email, automatic text messages, create automatic task workflows to be able to get the information and the file move through the contractor system much quicker. And we are experimenting with the payments flow. And when you talk about pricing, in the next couple of years, we'll know a lot more on what claims should cost, and not from an assumptions base. I think there's a huge problem with pricing in the industry. I'm building a house right now. I'm an Xactimate certified trainer. I wrote my new construction in Xactimate to the T. It's costing me more at cost to build that same house than it should in Xactimate.
We've got to talk about that. I've often wondered, are there multiple languages in the pricing market, right? Insurance speaks Xactimate and Symbility pricing. Contractor speaks Home Depot, Lowe's, other pricing, what they know it can cost. Talk a little bit about that and some difficulties that the industry has in being able to translate these pricing languages.
Yeah. So the Symbility and Xactimate pricing language is an assumptions-based model. like when you say algorithms are great. You have an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of functions, and the functions do math and it spits out things. But algorithms are only as great as the assumptions that back that algorithm are. And, for example, the 10 and 10 overhead and profit, for those of you listening that know what I'm talking about, algorithm is actually an assumptions from a training example from Xactimate's workbook to teach the user how simple it is to just plug in 10 and 10 and see what it does to the numbers. And it's become an industry standard, and there's still profitability to be made. Don't get me wrong, but it's a false assumption. So when you look at the Xactware and Symbility models, they're assumptions-based algorithms based on pricing departments doing quote unquote research. And what I could also tell you is that the amount of phone calls and data point research that has been done specifically on the labor stuff has gone down. No restoration contractor in Chicago has ever received a call that I know of, right, from anybody asking how much should this cost. And there's these, assumptions based. And I assume there's, inflation assumptions and so on and so forth. But what I could tell you for a fact is that on a reconstruction job today, my gross margin as a restoration contractor is significantly less than it was 10 to 15 years ago. So when contractors speak their language, they're looking at a specific gross margin percentage for them to be able to do the work. And that just keeps getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Their subcontractors are getting more expensive. Everything's rising faster than the assumed models of Xactware and Symbility are rising. And as an Xactimate certified trainer, I could tell you that what we tell all of our students is, learn how to look into the assumptions and defend or actually argue the wrong assumptions. So for example, when lumber went up, during COVID, Xactimate lagged. But when I was writing estimates, I went in there and I saw that a sheet of plywood was shown for $30 per sheet. And then I went to Home Depot's website and I showed the adjuster $70 per sheet. We didn't have any argument. We got along perfectly fine because I knew how to look into the model and find the assumptions of the Xactimate pricing and then see where they're wrong. Most contractors or most adjusters don't understand how either work, and they find one or the other as the Bible when really all it is, it's a guideline and there's assumptions and there's math behind it. So I think to eliminate the friction, it's very important for everybody to understand how those assumptions are made, and be able to argue the semantics of the assumptions versus get emotional or get high level, if that makes sense.
Is there room in the space for more pricing? Like, are we needing more competition in the pricing space, or are we needing it to be reworked? What are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. I would say that there is the need to have the source of truth on what's going on in the pricing world. And I feel that because of the technical debt that exists in the InsureTech ecosystem, even though some data may exist out there, it's not properly being used and it's not properly representing what true pricing is. When CoreLogic bought Next Gear Solutions, it's a slam dunk. 10,000 restoration contractors worth of data now belongs to CoreLogic. I bet you, if you were to look under the hood at the type of data they have there, and I've seen, Dash user data because they're a competitor, we've moved people over. And when you look at the poor utilization, and because the UX is so complicated and because the integrations don't work properly, the data is almost meaningless. And everybody thinks, oh, we have contractor data and we back these assumptions by contractor data. It's like, no, you didn't, because the way you're collecting that data in, 2007 way of database architecture won't work. And then on top of that, we're saying, oh, we're going to supercharge it by AI and all of these other things. Well, fundamentally, if you can't capture the data properly, you're not going to be able to throw an AI. It's going to hallucinate like crazy if you throw an AI on some data model built back in the 2007s that, you can't. And I guarantee you, I've seen world-class restoration contractors that speak at the conferences about their amazing BI tools and such, and the data model is messed up.
You got to have a right data model. You got to have the right, you got to have clean data.
Correct. And the way you get to clean data is to build the product that is so embedded in the user behavior and is able to correlate everything. The challenge is no two restoration companies are the same. So one does TPA work, one doesn't, and so on and so forth. So you also have to have the box of how everything operates, but then the flexibility within the box. And then you need to correlate certain things to certain things, like lead technician and crew chief and the person doing the work versus project manager or the salesperson. And there's just so many layers to it. But starting with a good data model is the key. And that's kind of what we're building, and tying the data model to the user behavior, UI, UX, like what the Silicon Valley tech companies do, InsureTech companies that were built back in the early 2000s don't do, because we write that off. We didn't do that at the beginning. And then it's like, oh, people aren't using our software. We don't have the data. We can't make certain assumptions. Oh, we don't have this gold mine we thought we had.
Yeah. So you brought up Dash. I didn't. You brought it up. It is a industry software. It's a competitor. Mostly it's one of the ones that come to mind when I think about a relatable product. What makes you different? Is it that you're able to collect cleaner data easier? What makes you different?
Yeah, I want to preface this conversation that, I admire and respect Garrett for what he's built. And
Absolutely.
Dash is an amazing platform, right? Like, first true tech replacing pen and paper within this much needed space, right?
Yeah.
And amazing outcome, right? Critical mass and very valuable to core logic and a very valuable piece of the entire InsureTech ecosystem.
Right.
What makes us different is we fundamentally believe that in order to compete in this space, we must win the users and the owners. And our go-to-market strategy is so heavily focused on the restoration contractor versus some sort of mandate or some sort of way to mass distribute. And it's got its pros and its cons. Its cons in our situation is, for investors out there, the CAC payback is significantly higher, right? You're not going out and selling a farmers and having farmers then tell all the contractors to utilize us. We're more crowdsourced.
Okay.
But that holds us to our mission, which is to propel the restoration industry forward, and holds our feet to the fire in the sense that we have to fight against mandates and build the best product that is actually going to bring value to these restoration contractors. Because I'm a firm believer that our net worth as an organization is a direct percentage of the value that we bring to the end users, right? And there will never be a world in which I go to a market and charge for something more than the value that I bring to that specific market. And I think fundamentally, we're obsessed over the individuals, the people who are showing up in homeowners' homes throughout the toughest times and making their lives so much easier. If insurance carriers require all these things, which they have every right to do because they're the ones cutting the check, great. How can we reduce that administrative burden and make them do more of what's important for them and what the chocolate is for them, which is making the homeowner happy and taking care of the house as quickly as possible? How can we take off the broccoli off their plate? Nobody likes updating dates. Nobody likes updating all these milestones. Nobody likes the systematized broccoli that we need in order to get these claims paid. So we go in and we're building the product that does that for them. That's what they're paying for, right? Their efficiency skyrockets. We then are able to get this moved through quicker. They get paid faster, right? The insurance company is able to pay faster. The homeowner is able to get their lives back together faster and simpler.
Are you integrating, you talked about earlier, working with VeriRisk to integrate. Is that your roadmap, integrating with insurance companies to be able to push and pull data quicker to build out that full file? Is that your roadmap?
Yeah, so I started out when I was a contractor building an entire organization, non-TPA heavy, a little, I'd say, anti-insurance and brainwashed by the rebels out in the world.
Yeah.
But eventually I realized that we're tied at the hip, whether we like it or not. And we're both sides of the spectrum are awesome people that are loving people that are driven by a common mission, is to take care of somebody when something bad happens. So at the end of the day, while I'm an advocate for restoration contractors and my heart is there because I'm one of them, I do believe in full claims transparency. And we did make a push. And even with CoreLogic, we will be integrating
Good.
Even though they own a competing product. But yes, the insurance carriers deserve their lives to be easier. And in turn, if the insurance carriers get that data quicker, they'll issue that check faster. They'll turn the file over more efficiently on their end. The contractor will get paid faster. The homeowner will get put back faster. And yeah, I'm all for open API, open ecosystem. I think that's huge. And obviously there's, PII concerns and all this other data concerns. But I think that as an industry, if we can get an ecosystem where the information just moves faster, it'll save us much more than it'll cost us.
Okay. Where are we at? What is your view on these managed repair networks out there? Are you working with the managed repair networks? Are you a standalone? Are you building your own? Like, what's going on with that? And to our listeners, right? A managed repair network is a company that has lots of contractors kind of under an umbrella. An insurance company says, hey, managed repair network, we need some help. And then they start funneling out the work, and they're kind of that middle person helping it. What is your view on that, and how do you work or not work with them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're open to working with managed repair networks. We sponsor both of the big ones, Alacrity included. We hold both to high regards. One thing that I'm shocked by is the lack of volume that goes through managed repair programs. And I think that there's enough value there that the volume should be bigger. Just full disclosure. I mean, I think something like 10 to 15 to 20% goes through there. Whereas you look in other economies like Canada, Australia, and UK, where all of it goes through some sort of system like that. And I think there's a lot of pros to that. I think that my opinion is that in order for managed repair programs to capture more market share and grow, which ultimately benefits the insurance companies, benefits the entire ecosystem, I think that the understanding of the contractor equals the claim is key. And I think that, again, investing in how do we eliminate the number of people required in an administrative role for every technician is the future of insurance claims. And I think that if that could happen, I would not be surprised if 10 years from now we had an HMO of property claims within the damage restoration space. But I think if that doesn't happen, there's just going to be so much pushback, back and forth, so much friction. And I don't know. That's my view on it. Again, pro contractor here. But yeah, I know there's also a lot of like third party reviewers that are coming up, and we're adding so many layers of complexity.
Yeah. What is your thought there? That was a push maybe May 2015, 2016. You saw third party reviewers come in, and they're auditing on behalf of an insurance company. Like what are you seeing there? What's your thought there?
Yeah.
And
I'll share a story.
Yeah, please. And plus, I do want to say, I see your tool being a super valuable asset when a third party comes in and says, hey, how many air movers did you have and how long were they? But please, of course, please share.
Yeah. We need to work together as an industry methodically. And I'll give you the example, right?
Please.
I had a contents claim for a big carrier, got sent to a managed review program, and they pushed back. We don't pay for moving blankets. Moving blankets are basically these blankets that are used to protect furniture when they're moved throughout and such. And I went back to that person. I'm like, why don't you pay for moving blankets? You paid for it on these 20 claims. And I sent them claim numbers of 20 other claims that I've gotten paid in full for these moving blankets. They're like, I'm sorry, my team just doesn't do that. Later, I find out that the whole premise of certain reviewers is cut something from the bill because the delta of what they cut, they're able to take in 50% of it or whatnot. So I went in and I took the moving blankets off and then factored the rest of the estimate. Factoring is a business practice that you could do where you can change the unit prices of Xactimate. And I wasn't a vendor program at the time under SLAs of the managed repair program, so I could do whatever I wanted. Submitted that in, 20% higher, and I cut $300 and increased by $1,000. He accepted it, paid the contractor, paid me.
Oh, wow.
Then it became a policy that we're changing our price list and we're adding this extra line items in. And I didn't find it was unethical because I stand by, as a contractor, I could charge what I want. I'm a premium contractor. And if this is what will get the adjusters to pay me quicker, that's what I'll do, because they want to go in there and take off these line items. And I pushed back and I did that. Moral of the story for every push we do, there's an equal and opposing pull, right?
Yeah.
And if we add this layer of complexity, i.e. the the claim review program, and we overly scrutinize, well, eventually the contractors will find a way, because you can't push on their margins and on their time to get paid enough, right? They've got to feed their families. Most of them, 90% of them, I'll tell you, are not crooked. They're honest, hardworking, amazing people that are literally just trying to put food on the table. And I bet you, if you were to look at their profit and loss and how much some of these people are taking home, like some of these restoration contractors that do 7 figures of revenue take home less than a corporate desk adjuster. Just saying.
Right.
So we overcomplicate it. We add all these layers and the prices still go up. And then what happens? Well, as insurance carriers, we're saying, well, our loss ratios are out of whack. We need to do something. And then what do? We raise prices, right? And now who suffers in the end? The policyholder. We add this bloat, this inefficiency, these extra layers in efforts to save money. But from the contractor's perspective, it's not. If we could just get to a point where it's like, hey, restoration contractor, we need you, because imagine a world where all restoration contractors say, hey, poof, they're gone. Supply and demand says that claims costs skyrocket.
Yeah.
Let's find a world where we can work together. We can transparently work together, and sometimes less is more. Less trying to dig into the claim, maybe more. And we see that within companies too. A lot of times, look in startup world, because it's other people's money, when startups have mass layoffs and then they actually produce more revenue with less employees. So
isn't that an interesting thought? Somewhere along the way, and maybe it was at the beginning of time, I don't know, Lloyd's of London when they were doing chips, but somewhere along the people lost trust in other people. And it seems like we put a lot of effort into making sure we can trust somebody and all these guardrails. But wouldn't it be a utopian type world if we could all just trust each other, knowing that we're all out there for the good? But there are the bad actors. There are the bad actors out there throughout the ecosystem who unfortunately make it difficult for everybody. But I'd like 100%. To bring it back to your software as an amazing tool from what I've never seen it. I can only visualize it. But as a great tool for true documentation of, you don't just have to trust my word, here's the information. I wanted to ask you about, you talked about transparency of the claim cycle. Are insurance companies able to look into your software, Albi? Are they able to look into it in real time and see your statuses of where you're at to communicate with the insureds? Or is it more of a, after you're done, you're able to package it up and send it in for a bill? What are you doing there?
Currently, the data, like the insurance companies live in their systems, which are exact analysis, and the Albi data feeds into it, and it can feed in real time. So as the contractor adds notes and updates dates and updates files and such, they would populate in real time in the insurance company's system, so long that it's through a manage repair relationship or it's a claim assignment that the insurance company has access over. If it's an independent claim, meaning the contractor, and again, for those listening, 80% of the time, I don't know if you'd agree or not, Lee, but 80% of the time, the contractor finds the work themselves through a plumber, through online marketing, or something like that. And in that case, the insurance company actually has no control. They just receive a bill 3 weeks later, and then they're trying to tear it up. I wish that could change too. I wish, together with Verisk and CoreLogic, we can help bridge that gap for claims that don't originate from the managed repair programs, or managed repair programs get more market share, or a blend of both. Because it's one thing to look over a PDF sent via email to blankety-claims@blankinsurancecompany.com, and it's another thing to get the data within real time. The other thing, it's like areas where we can win in the InsureTech ecosystem, I think time.
Yeah.
So if we look at time, I heard something like 15 to 20% of property insurance claims, that percentage goes to ALE, additional living expenses. The homeowner's out of the house because of XYZ reason. and we're sitting here for a month going back and forth on how much the price should be. And we're saving $2,000 here, but we're spending $5,000 on additional living expenses. So I think if we could optimize speed, and technology obviously helps us with that. And 2, time to payment. I bet you there could be a world where the insurance carriers say, hey, look, I'll issue the check tomorrow. They're not making money on those funds anyway, because it's in the claims reserve. What's the point of them sitting in the claims reserve? Let's issue them quickly and to the contractor, so the contractor can start work. And the contractors, they make good EBITDA on accrual basis. It's just the cash basis one that's the problem. Like, I've seen restoration companies that they make 20% net profit on paper, but 2% on not paper. And the delta, the 18%, is literally the time it takes for a homeowner's check, for the check to go to the homeowner, mortgage company back to homeowner and their bank account, and then manual check written. And I have mad props for Watley. I don't know if you know Mark Watley with Surety.
I do.
He's building in that space and doing an interesting InsureTech product to help solve that problem. So
absolutely. I was going to ask if you're working with anybody or if you're in talks with anybody about stuff. But yeah, I know Watley. That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You're absolutely right. I've never, and I'm sure, this is not the perception, but I've never worked with an insurance company. I've worked with many who said, let's delay that payment because nothing good happens when that payment's delayed. Now, are there processes and procedures out there that accidentally cause payments to be delayed because we have to check and double check and triple check? Yeah, that's out there, but no one ever wants to delay. And nothing good happens when you delay the payment. As you said, ALE is this whole thing that we haven't talked about, but the additional living expenses you continue to pay. And so the longer it takes to get it done. So I love the idea of working together with all parties in the ecosystem. I do have to ask, are you working with inspection InsureTech companies? Is there anything out there with like your hostas or your planners or Better Views or anything like that? Are you integrated or working with any of them?
None yet. But for the right opportunity, we're open, and we also have an open API. So if anybody wants to build on top of us, we're very open and open to any partnerships and relationships. And if you think there's somebody we should be working with, our product team would love to talk with them.
Sounds good. There's some neat things out there that I'm sure you could work with. Well, Alex, we're here. We're here at the end of our time. As you noticed, we lost Rob a little bit of the way through there, but we continue to have our conversation, and I was happy with that. But I can't wait to hear how this goes. You actually got me really, really excited about the future of this space. So maybe in a year or two, you can come back on, and we can get an update.
Yeah,
would that be okay?
Would absolutely love to, Lee. Thanks so much for this.
Thanks for being on, Alex.
Every once in a while we meet somebody who has come up through the business, through the insurance or contractor or what business. And it's like so surprising how really, really smart they are. And today was one of those days.
Today was one of those days. And if you were wondering how he got into Y Combinator, you don't wonder anymore.
No,
he knows his
all.
stuff. He's a stud. He's a stud.
Totally on it.
Yeah.
Completely on it.
I think I was actually, I'm not going to say I was surprised. I kind of thought today's podcast was going to be, it's a software. And we're going to talk about software and we're going to talk about integrations. But no, it's a software that could really revolutionize the industry. I kept thinking about all the data that comes out of it and the proof, and there's so much that could come out of this. I'm very excited to see where this goes. And I love to hear that he's working with Verisk and with CoreLogic and with others. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. A smart young man with tons of experience, practical experience. See, this is the interesting thing about practical experience in an industry, which we've talked about many times, about how in the earlier days of InsureTech, there would be nobody from the insurance industry on somebody's team. Mm-hmm. And today you don't run into that at all. Here's somebody who came out of this business. He started by knowing the business intimately. combining that with his intelligence, and here he is today.
Very,
very
I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, and speaking of where it goes, this goes off in about 20 seconds after we say thanks to our producers and thanks to our audience. As always, this podcast does not exist without you. And so we say thank you. And until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.